Traditionally, we assume that there is only 4 environmental spheres, which is water, air, living organism, and earth, or the lithosphere. But now it's really important to consider the 5th environmental spheres, which is the anthrosphere, which consists of the things that human make and do. Okay, so material and energy are exchanged among these spheres largely through the biogeochemical cycle, which is the carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus cycles. And also, the anthrosphere have strong interaction with other environmental spheres. For example, cultivation of land can modify the geosphere. Diversion and use of water affects the hydrosphere. The emission of particles, acid gases, organics, greenhouse warming of carbon dioxide can affect the atmosphere. This figure just shows an examples of the things that human make or do that can be considered as the effect of to the anthrosphere, or the effect of anthrosphere to the other environmental spheres. Okay, for example, here we have an example of manufacturing processes in the anthrosphere in the chemical industry. So one aspect of manufacturing that has caused many problems is the production and improper disposal of hazardous waste such as toxic heavy metals or organochlorine compounds, because these compounds or heavy metals may undergo bioaccumulation. This is what we're trying to remove or reduce the waste generated from any processes that humans do. So the past, present, and potential global threat of environmental pollution and degradation is one of the main factors that has an effect on the formation of society environments. Environmental pollution and degradation can be caused by chemical substances, physical factors, or the development of undesirable living organisms. So what is pollution or pollutant? Pollutant is any substance released into the environment as a result of human activities or natural processes that has an adverse impact on living organisms, while environmental degradation means that the environment becomes unusable for its design purpose, or that the development of living organisms and their communities in the environment is disturbed. But the cycles or the impact of human, so pollution from water to air to soil to water to air to soil to, so it's a circles where human have effect on, it produce impact to all these cycles. Okay. The pollution can come from either natural or man-made, or we call anthropogenic sources. So for example of natural pollution is from volcano, dust, or carbon dioxide from respiration and fire. Man-made, you can name many of them: sanitation, agriculture, manufacturing, transportation, and industrial processes. So this is some of the example waste or pollution generated from paper production. When you cut down the wood from forests, it will cause deforestation and soil erosion. During the manufacturing of pulp and paper, you produce persistent organic pollutant. And when you use the paper, you produce solid waste. So throughout the process, you generate waste. And another example is burning of paper and other organic materials, where from fire, it can produce heat that leads to the global warming. It produces sulfur dioxide that can lead to acid rain. It produces carbon dioxide that can cause the greenhouse effect that leads to the global warming. It can cause respiration problems, and some of the emitted gases are known to be carcinogen that can cause many chemical, physical, and biological factors. And physical factors can lead to change in short term or long term. For example, long term is the climate change. It can also caused by the man's activities, while the chemical factors is the changes through elevation of concentration of substance, for example, nutrients, eutrophication, toxic substances such as pesticide, health risks, organics, and the reduced quality of raw water supply. Biological processes like predation or grazing, non-predatory effects like digging, and man-induced events like tree felling, hunting, etc. It can reduce species niche, ecological imbalance, cutting trees, reduce oxygen generation capability. When you are evaluating pollutants, okay, there are a few factors that you need to consider. Okay, so I'm talking this generally. So it can be applied if either the pollutant are in the air or in water or in soil. Okay, so when we want to evaluate whether this pollutant, how far does it travel? What is the transformation that it can have? And then what is finally the fate of this pollutant? So first we need to know whether these pollutants are toxic or not. Does it have long-term toxicity or does it have short-term toxicity? Some chemical, they are toxic at very low concentration. So it takes some time for you to consume the pollutant to see the effect of the pollutant. Okay, so that is what we call long-term toxicity. For example, the cause of cancer, carcinogenic pollutants. Okay, if you consume the pollutant, for example PAH, you will not see the direct toxicity. Okay, you will not see the short-term toxicity. It takes time for the cancer to develop in your body. Okay, so that is what we call a long-term toxicity. And then some are short-term toxicity. For example, once you inhale, you will have an acute effect. So such as you have that, you can see a respiratory problem, you cannot breathe, or you just die. Okay, so that is short-term toxicity. And then we need to evaluate whether the pollutant are persistent or non-degradable. Okay, persistent meaning they are stable in the environment. Okay, is the pollutant inert against biological activities? Okay, it is non-biodegradable and no biospecies or bacteria can degrade this pollutant. For example, those that have chlorides. Okay, some famous pesticide that use chloride base in the formulation is DDT, okay, which is the famous pesticide, salts, and also other refractory organic substances. And then there are also some pollutants that can be degradable. Okay, so if they are degradable, they are not persistent. So they can be degraded by biological activities such as organic substances or radioactive material. So because radioactive, they tend to disintegrate, okay, after quite some time. And then bioaccumulation. Okay, does the species, the chemical species, can undergo bioaccumulation or not? Those that have the ability to undergo bioaccumulation is because they are attracted to fat. Okay, they tend to accumulate in your body fat. So it can be the body fat of any organism. It can be fish, it can be bird or human. Okay, and then these bioaccumulated species, they can be degradable or non-degradable substance. They are persistent. Okay, this is the synonym of persistent organic pollutants, which is POPs. For example, mercury, cadmium, lead, and some of the insecticide and herbicides. Its distribution behavior, the rate of the distribution, is it fast or slow? The distance that it can travel, which in this case dependent on the gravity. Okay, so if you emitted a gas such as during combustion, okay, your combustion,
you emit gas, organic gas, and then you also emit particulate matters. So the particulate matter, it will travel at a shorter distance as compared to gases. Okay, so sulfur dioxide will tend to travel much further as compared to particulate matter. Okay. And then the chemical reaction that it can undergoes, or the transformation. Yeah, so can it undergoes adsorption reaction? Can it undergoes hydrolysis reaction, redox reaction, photolysis, radical reaction, any biological reaction, okay, and volatilization, and etc. Okay, and then the degree of difficulty to control the pollution. So some pollutant they can be controlled easily because they are more visible, okay, or they travel at a shorter distance. But some pollutants, they tend to travel further away and they are not visible. So it's difficult to control this type of pollutants. And then when you evaluating the impact of chemical pollutants on the environment, there are also some questions that you need to answer. Okay, in order to determine the transportation and also the fate of this pollutant. First, you need to ask, how long will chemicals persist in the environment? How long will it stay in the environment or stable in the environment? So this relates to whether they can undergo hydrolysis reaction, photolysis, biodegradation, metabolism, sorption, and biomagnify. Okay, so some species they undergoes biomagnification very fast, some of it they are very slow. But this will depend on their physical and chemical properties. And then the second question you need to ask, how does a chemical move from one compartment to another? So from land to the atmosphere, into the water. Okay, so what type of movement does they involve? For example, deposition. Okay, so deposition, there are two types actually. There are dry deposition, there are wet deposition. So dry deposition is, for example, like sandstorms. Okay, so there are dust storm, that is dry deposition. Wet deposition involve rain, okay, or snow. Okay, and then volatilization. Okay, so from land to the atmosphere to the air, they are they volatile, they evaporate. Okay, so for example, some chemical species they have a lower evaporation rate. So and some are very fast. And then leaching from the water to solid. Okay, from water to soil. Okay, some of the pollutant they can leach from the water body to the groundwater. Okay, so they can travel in the soil medium. Runoff, okay, from the land, they can be runoff to the water stream, and this can be enhanced by the action of rain. Okay, uptake, okay, pollutant that for example in the water, they can be uptake by organism. For example, those that can be eaten by phytoplankton or zooplankton, and then they can be taken up by larger organism. Okay, so how does the food change contamination occurs? Okay, some of the pollutants, they are not only stable in the environment, they are also stable in organism. So how we define that they are stable is through bioaccumulation. First, bioaccumulation is from water. So the chemical species is initially in the water, and from there they get eaten up or they have been uptaken by organism through either contact, digestion, or respiration. So mostly bioaccumulation occurs during digestion. Okay, for example, they have been studied that a very high concentration of DDT are observed in birds or seagulls. Okay, because DDT, they are in the water, it is used as pesticide. So once you apply on land, the pesticide run off towards water body. And then in the water body, there are small organisms such as phytoplankton or zooplankton, and these are eaten up by small fish. Okay, and then these small fish are eaten up by trout, larger fish called trout, and then these larger fish are eaten up by birds or seagulls. So they have detected that the egg produced from the birds also contain DDT. Okay, so this is what we call bioaccumulation. It's from the water to the organism. And then we have bioconcentration, also from water to organism, but this is only through respiration. And then through biomagnification. Biomagnification is the increase of substance concentration within food chain. So slightly different from bioaccumulation because this involves the increase of concentration. So as smaller fish will have lower concentration of the pollutant as compared to the big fish, because big fish they need to eat more fish, more smaller fish. So in the end, the concentration of the pollutant biomagnify or increases in the body of the bigger fish. For example, mercury. They have been conducted to measure the concentration of mercury in fish, and they found that smaller fish have lower concentration as compared to larger fish. So for example, larger fish is tuna or mackerel. Okay, so tuna and mackerel, they have higher concentration of mercury as compared to smaller fish. And then what are the physical and chemical characteristics that determine how a chemical behaves in the environment? So this depends on their water solubility, octanol water partition coefficient. So this relates on how the pollutants are attracted to the body fat. Okay. And then the hydrolysis half-life, the photolysis half-life, density of liquid, density of vapor, vapor pressure, and soil sorption. Okay. So when, let's say that if a pollutant is given to you, okay, I use example DDT. I give you, so farmers have applied DDT as pesticide for their agriculture. So can you discuss the fate and transportation of DDT in the environment? So you need to know what is the water solubility of DDT, what is its octanol water partition, and so on, so that you can discuss about their behavior in the environment, their transportation, and also their fates. Okay, so for water solubility, let's say, because water solubility will define the mobility, the stability, the accumulation and bioaccumulation potential. So if you have a pollutant with higher water solubility, then they are more likely to be mobile, they are more likely to be biodegraded, and they are more likely to be metabolized. Okay, so those with low solubility, they are more likely to immobilize by absorption. Okay, they are accumulated and bioaccumulated, and they are persistent. While those that have higher KAOW here, they are likely to be bioaccumulated, bioconcentrated, and they tend to soak in soils and sediments. So this is how you can predict the activity or the behavior of the chemical species in the environment, depending on their physical and chemical activity. Okay, so I think this one you can read by yourself. And then lastly, the other factors are chemical and biological transformation, and levels of toxicity, just what I have mentioned.